will we will be free. For when the rising tide is turned in every London quarter, Parliament comes crashing down with Robert's Rules of Order.
Alrighty, who's
It's a different room back there. It's your turn to read.
Oh. Alright. You should have told me.
I did. You just I just told you late.
You cheated and looked, didn't you?
I didn't even read the damn thing.
Well, but,
I don't even know what the hell's on the question.
Okay, March 6th. March 6th. In a contest.
I lose.
In a contest between delegates.
Yes.
Ooh, I like this one. During an amendment. Oh no, I don't like
What?
this. Let's start again.
Please.
At first I thought I liked it.
You went from over here to way the hell over there.
I did. In a contest.
That didn't jump the track. That jumped railroads.
Okay, yeah, I got excited because I saw the word substitute, and you know, that's my, my thing. Makes me hot and bothered. Okay, in a contest between delegates, during an amendment to substitute a different set of delegates.
Oh, gods. Paging Oregon, your question is ready.
A, none of the sets of delegates involved can enter into the debate. B, both sets of delegates can vote on the amendment. C, none of the delegates involved in the case can vote. D, none of the delegates involved in the case can be seated.
Rattle off those choices again.
Do you need the main question
No,
again? Okay.
just the choices.
A, none of the sets of delegates involved can enter into the debate.
Okay.
B, both sets of delegates can vote on the amendment.
Keep going.
C, none of the delegates involved in the case can vote.
Also, D.
D, none of the delegates involved in the case can be seated.
I'm sticking with A, and I'll tell you why. If there is a challenge going on between a seated delegation and one that claims that they should be seated, the seated delegation still has voting rights, but the ones that aren't seated yet, so they don't. Because they have the voting rights, they have the debate rights. But at the same time, you can't deny them those debates. And the ones who aren't actually delegated yet don't have any rights to debate or vote at all.
I think you're misunderstanding the premise.
Okay.
I might be misunderstanding it. I think the way you're viewing it is this is a group of delegates.
Yes.
And these is a different group of delegates who think that they belong here, and these guys should be thrown out.
Right.
I don't think that's what they're saying. I think what they're saying is this is a group of uncontested delegates.
Yes.
And some people in this group want to add these people.
Right.
And someone else in this group says, no, not these people, add these people.
Yeah.
It's different from what you had said. You have some here that aren't contested.
The presumption that neither of these groups have been seated already.
Right. That's the way I'm reading this question.
Read the beginning part of the question one more time. I'm not convinced.
Okay. I think it's the only way it makes sense, because I know the answer as well here. But that's the way I could be wrong. In a contest between delegates,
Yes.
during an amendment to substitute a different set of delegates,
Yes.
none of the sets of delegates involved can enter into the debate, which is A.
Right.
B, both sets of delegates can vote on the amendment. C, none of the delegates involved in the case can vote. D, none of the delegates involved in the case can be seated.
See, the problem is the way that question is worded. It doesn't indicate that directly that one group is seated and one isn't. However, because it's a substitute.
The only way to me this makes sense is neither are seated. And there's a group that is seated that's debating about two different groups.
But if you're substituting one group for another, in terms of seating,
One additional group. is the way I'm understanding
I'm
it.
reading it to say one for the other, so it's a substitute to say kick this group out and put this group in.
But who would be? But that motion is made by people who are already seated that aren't contested.
Right.
Right.
But the question is not about what these guys can do. The question is what these guys
Right.
can do.
Exactly.
Right.
So we're talking about
And
three
what I'm
different
saying,
groups
and
here.
what I'm saying is that if the seated group is already, if there's a group that's already seated and they're
Right.
looking to be tossed, as a seated group, they still have full voting and debate rights.
they're not-
But the group that is seeking to put them out does not, because they're not seated yet.
Okay, but if you and I agree that we're talking about three groups,
Yeah.
one that's already there,
Everybody else.
and then potentially new delegates A and potentially new delegates B.
I don't think I'm not reading it that way.
How are you reading it?
I'm reading this as this group's everybody else, not counting these guys.
Right.
So let's put a state on here. Oregon A, Oregon B, because this has happened in the past.
Right, that's what.
This is everybody else in the
Right.
in the convention, not named Oregon.
Right.
Okay. The motion before everybody else not named Oregon is to take Oregon A, who is seated, and toss them out in place of Oregon B. That's the way I'm reading it.
Well, we're talking about a substitute.
That's
So-
substituting B for A.
Well, this is the way. So here's the convention.
Right.
Credentials Committee moves that this set of delegates be seated as the Oregon
The B
delegation.
group, yes.
Someone else says, I move a substitute motion that this group be seated as the Oregon delegates. It's a substitute motion.
Is it a substitute motion or is it a substitution of delegates in the motion? That's where I'm going.
It says to substitute a different set.
That's a substitution of a delegation, not a substitute, not a motion. That's a motion to substitute, not a substitute motion.
During an amendment to substitute a different set of delegates. I think it's the same thing.
That's just badly worded. All right, what's the answer?
Well, which one do you
I'm
guys?
still sticking with A.
You're sticking with A,
Yeah.
that none of the sets of the delegates involved can enter into the debate.
Was that? I thought it was. Wait a minute. Give me the choices. Give me. Okay.
Okay.
Give me the choices one more time.
A,
This is a tricky one.
none of the sets of the delegates involved can enter into the debate.
Okay, B.
B, both sets of delegates can vote on the amendment. C, none of the delegates involved in the case can vote. D, none of the delegates involved in the case can be seated.
All four of those are equally don't make any sense to the way I'm perceiving the question. So I'm not sure. So what's the answer?
Okay, the answer is C. None of the delegates involved in the case can vote. And when you think about it, it makes sense because neither of them have been seated.
But see, that's the problem. Is I don't think that the way the question's worded, you can make the assumption that neither have been seated yet.
Well, it says it's a contest, so they haven't been seated yet. That's the way why I understand it the way this way. So let's.
Hang on. I want to read. I want to see the text here. See, this is where I have the trouble. During an amendment to substitute a different set of delegates, substitute tells me that one group is already there.
No, because I think they're proposing seating certain delegates.
Yeah, it's just why this is why the wording is really crappy.
So if
All right, let's go see what it says. 616.
616.
This was a weird one.
But you see how I interpreted it, because that's the only way to make any sense.
I'm not seeing it the way you're interpreting it.
Really?
Yeah.
But the reason is, okay, A, it's obviously not going to be none of them can be seated, because then
Yeah.
there would be no point.
That's absurd, yeah.
Let's skip C for now. None can enter into the debate. I would think
If
they
one-
should be able to make arguments on their own behalf as to why they should be seated.
But if one group is, well, technically, isn't a right to debate a part of being a seated delegate, is the question.
You're allowed to let other people.
Advocate for you, yes. But you yourself can't unless you're not.
Well,
So
like alternates.
If neither one of these are seated, then this is actually a true statement.
Well, no, they can enter the debate by consent. Just like any third party can.
Well, true, but... And of course, both voting, if neither is seated, doesn't make any sense. And if one's seated, it doesn't make any sense. That's why
Right.
B doesn't make any sense. And if one is seated, then none can vote doesn't make any sense, which is why I say C is not right, even though they say it's the right answer.
So now we can go.
All right. C 26 to 28. Okay.
26 through 28.
And actually, that
Well,
paragraph
we have a
starts at
studio
11.
audience right now. You came in mid, fully shitty question. All right, so I think. Oh Lord, this goes really far back.
Yes, it does.
All right, but I think my interpretation though. Yeah, because it's talking about the Credentials Committee report.
Right.
Remember, and I even said it that way.
Right.
Attached is the list of the names of the voting members. Blah
Right.
blah.
Right. This is the previous page, folks.
yeah.
This is 615.
But I think now I'm skipping over. It's just given the context. If there's an unresolved contest,
Between delegates.
blah, blah, blah. So then the chair says, on behalf of the committee, I move that the roll of delegates, this hereby be submitted as the official roll, and the names are read.
Right.
Amendments can be offered, so you can add names.
Okay, so the context here is that the chair has made the motion.
Right. The Credentials Committee chair.
Motion. Yeah, the Credentials Committee chairman has made the motion that rule be the official rule of voting members.
Be
and then
accepted.
the amendment to that motion
Right.
would be to add a contest between delegates.
Right, but
That's the context that's missing in the question.
but that's exactly how I understood it.
But there's someone not even recognizing that context, not having that is.
Yeah, but that's the only way I thought you
It's
could.
like during an amendment to what? I mean,
Right.
it's,
So while there was an amendment, someone said, "Screw all that. I want to substitute. Like it's broader than just adding somebody. They want to substitute a whole group."
yeah.
So let's see. So it continues 26 through 28.
In order to which amendments even was
On an amendment proposing changes, none of the delegates involved in the case can vote.
Okay. Those seated by the committee, though contested in a case not yet reached, can vote in all cases except their own. On the question of adopting the committee report or motion is connected, only those persons whose names are on the list are entitled to vote.
Right.
So-
And they're not on the list yet.
Okay. Which means that what I was saying in the case of trying to substitute one group for another was valid, but that's not the context of the question.
No, which is why I was.
Right. But
Right.
the context of the question doesn't indicate.
They should have added in here the whole thing about the credentialing committee.
Yes, that would have made the question a lot more clear.
Yeah. All right. Well, add it to the pile of shit. I'm gonna order that pink poop. So, was it me?
Yes.
Hey, I could do it right here. Adjourned.
He's gaveling a Kleenex pile, folks.
Viva! Let's hear the opposition side. Like a stubborn donkey's bray. All opposed? You say nay. Opposed! Opposed! The motion carries anyway.